When you grow up, your heart dies.
Who cares?
I care.
Did you know Ali Sheedy actually started out as a published author before she ever appeared in a movie? She was part of Hollywood's most famous young ensemble, the so-called Brat Pack, starring in The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, Short Circuit and War Games, and for a few years she was everywhere. In this video we're taking a closer look at her journey, from a precocious New York kid with a flair for writing to an icon of teen cinema, to her quiet reinvention away from the Hollywood spotlight. So, what happened to Ali Sheedy? Let's fade to black. Ali Sheedy was born in New York City on June 13, 1962. Her mother, Charlotte Baum, was a writer and press agent who worked in television and journalism, and her father, John Sheedy, was an advertising executive. When her parents divorced, Ali was still young, and she and her two siblings were raised mostly by her mother on Manhattan's Upper West Side, right in the heart of 1970s New York's creative chaos. She was a curious kid. From an early age, she loved ballet, studying with the American Ballet Theatre, and dreaming of a life on stage. But even before she set foot in front of a camera, she was writing. At just 12 years old, she published a children's book titled She Was Nice to Mice, which became a small success and even landed her on The Tonight Show. Not bad for a pre-teen with big ambitions. As she moved into her teenage years, Sheedy's interest shifted from dance to acting. She studied at the Columbia Grammar and Prep School and began performing in local theatre productions, quickly gaining attention for her natural, emotive style. After graduating, she enrolled at Columbia University, where she majored in English and kept acting on the side, bouncing between auditions, classes and student film projects. By the early 80s, Ali was starting to get noticed in the New York theatre circuit and soon began landing small television parts, guest spots on shows like St. Elsewhere and Hill Street Blues. It was clear she had something, that same unfiltered energy that would soon make her one of the defining faces of a generation. 1983 turned out to be a breakout year for Ali Sheedy, and it started with one of her toughest roles. In Bad Boys, released in March 1983, she played JC, the loyal girlfriend of Sean Penn's volatile delinquent Mick O'Brien. The film was raw, violent, and miles away from the light comedies she'd be known for later. It showed that Sheedy could hold her own opposite a powerhouse performer like Penn. Just a few months later, she completely switched gears with War Games, teaming up with Matthew Broderick, who played Jennifer Mack, the girl next door who gets swept into a Cold War computer crisis that almost triggers World War III. War Games was a huge hit and one of the defining films of the decade, a perfect blend of teenage adventure and high-tech paranoia. Sheedy's natural warmth grounded the story and made her instantly recognisable to a global audience. With two contrasting performances in the same year, one dark and gritty, the other light and endearing, Ali Sheedy had arrived. Hollywood took notice, and within a year, she joined the so-called Brat Pack, stepping into Oxford Blues, and soon after, The Breakfast Club. By 1985, Ali Sheedy was part of something bigger, a full-blown cultural moment that would come to define 1980s youth cinema, the Brat Pack. It was a label the media coined for a tight group of young actors: Sheedy, Judd Nelson, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Molly Ringwald, Andrew McCarthy and Demi Moore, who seemed to represent a new generation of Hollywood, smart, emotional and just a little rebellious. For Sheedy, that era began with a lightning-in-a-bottle performance in The Breakfast Club. She played Alison Reynolds, the basket case, quiet, withdrawn, hiding behind her hair and a black coat. And while the louder characters might grab the spotlight, Sheedy's performance gives the film its soul. That small smile, that moment of connection at the end, it's still one of the most resonant scenes of John Hughes' career. The Breakfast Club cost barely $1 million to make, yet it became a global phenomenon, tapping into a generation's sense of confusion and alienation. For Ali Sheedy, it made her instantly recognisable, the thinking person's teen star. Later that same year came St. Elmo's Fire, directed by Joel Schumacher, and it pushed the Brat Pack into a more adult world. Sheedy played Leslie Hunter, the grounded, sensible heart of a group of recent college graduates trying to figure out what comes next. Where The Breakfast Club captured adolescence, St. Elmo's Fire tackled the messy transition into adulthood, careers, relationships, and compromise. Sheedy's character is caught between loyalty and independence, Visually slick, packed with pop music montages and glossy 80s energy, St Elmo's Fire wasn't universally loved by critics, but audiences connected with it, enough to make it a solid hit at the box office. For many fans, it became the next chapter of The Breakfast Club, and Ali Sheedy was at the centre of both. By the end of 1985, she was one of the most recognisable actresses in Hollywood, smart, relatable, and authentic in a way a few of her peers could match. But the same label that lifted her up, the Brat Pack, was about to become a creative trap, one that would shadow her through the next stage of her career. If you're enjoying this trip back to the Brat Pack era, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this every week. Footloose, Ghostbusters, all those movies Back to the Future had fantastic soundtracks. St Elmo's Fire and The Breakfast Club were no exception. After back-to-back hits with The Breakfast Club and St Elmo's Fire, Ali Sheedy was suddenly one of Hollywood's most bankable young actresses, and like many of her Brat Pack peers, she moved into lighter, more mainstream territory, the kind of family-friendly films that filled cinemas throughout the mid-80s. In 1986, she starred in Short Circuit, a sci-fi comedy about a sentient military robot who develops emotions after being struck by lightning. It sounds ridiculous, but it was fantastic fun, thanks largely to Sheedy's warmth and likability on screen. Her chemistry with Steve Guttenberg and her ability to play genuine wonder without irony helped sell the film's heart. Short Circuit became a massive success, grossing over $40 million in the US alone and cementing her as a familiar face to moviegoers outside the Brat Pack bubble. The film's mix of humour, heart and effects was pure mid-80s comfort viewing, and Sheedy was right at the centre of it. The following year brought Made to Order, a fantasy comedy about a spoiled socialite transformed into a maid to learn humility. It didn't reach the same box office heights as Short Circuit, but it showed Sheedy's willingness to take on offbeat, character-driven projects. The film definitely had its flaws, but her performance was consistently engaging, blending charm, sarcasm and sincerity in a way that was unmistakably her own. By this point, Ali Sheedy had achieved something rare. She'd proven she could carry a film, switch genres, and hold her own alongside anyone. Hollywood had changed, and so had the kind of roles being written for women her age. After being branded a Brat Pack actress, the industry seemed unsure what to do with her, and for Sheedy, who had always chosen roles with depth and intelligence, that was a frustrating place to be. Behind the scenes, she was also facing her own personal challenges. The constant spotlight and pressure of early fame began to take their toll. Sheedy has spoken openly in later years about her battles with addiction and bulimia during this time, issues that were rarely discussed publicly in the 80s. It was a period of exhaustion and self-doubt, and for someone who'd been working non-stop since her teens, the weight of it all caught up with her. She took time away from Hollywood to focus on recovery and to rebuild her sense of identity outside of the industry. Around this time, she also ended her relationship with Bon Jovi guitarist Richie Sambora, a breakup that, despite the tabloid noise surrounding it, seemed to mark a turning point. Even during these quieter years, Sheedy didn't vanish. She worked on smaller films, appeared in television projects, and performed in theatres, choosing creative spaces that felt more authentic and less commercial. And when she returned in a big way at the end of the decade, it wasn't with another mainstream hit, it was with something far braver and far more personal. By the late 1990s, most people had stopped expecting a comeback from Ali Sheedy. The Brat Pack era had long since passed into nostalgia, contemporaries had drifted away from the spotlight, but Sheedy wasn't finished. In 1998, she took on a small, independent film called High Art, written and directed by Lisa Cholodenko, and it completely changed the way people saw her. Sheedy played Lucy Berliner, a once famous photographer living in quiet isolation, numbed by addiction and artistic burnout. It was a complex, intimate performance that felt worlds away from the bright energy of her 80s work, and that was exactly the point. She later said, "It was the first time I felt like I was finally doing something that was mine. There was no studio pressure, no image to maintain, it was just me and the work." Director Lisa Cholodenko recalled that Sheedy threw herself into the part from day one. She was fearless, she said. "I think she saw a lot of herself in Lucy, the struggle, the creativity, the vulnerability. There was no vanity in it, and that's why it worked so well." When asked about the film years later, Sheedy said, "Lucy was the closest I've ever come to putting my real self on screen. After everything I'd been through, I finally felt seen again." For her, High Art wasn't just a new chapter, it was closure, healing, and proof that she was still one of the most truthful actors of her generation. After High Art, Ali Sheedy didn't chase another wave of fame. She'd already proven herself, not just to Hollywood, but to herself. Instead, she shifted her focus to work that felt more meaningful, both on and off the screen. In the years that followed, Sheedy began teaching acting at the City College of New York, mentoring young performers who reminded her of where she started. She once said, "What I love about teaching is seeing that moment when someone stops performing and starts feeling it. That's when it becomes real." Her students have described her as patient, insightful, and surprisingly self-effacing. One former student said, "She never talks about being famous. You only find that out later. She treats everyone in the room like a collaborator." Alongside teaching, Sheedy quietly returned to the stage, performing in regional theatre and off-Broadway productions. She loved the immediacy of theatre, the connection with a live audience, the sense of rediscovery with each performance. Television brought her back to mainstream audiences in the 2000s, most notably through her recurring role as the mysterious Mr. Yang on Psych. It was a darkly comic, self-aware part, and fans loved it. Sheedy once joked, "When they told me the character was basically a charming sociopath, I said, perfect. I've been preparing for this since the 80s. The show's creators, Steve Franks and James Roday, both praised her willingness to play against type. Roday said she came in and completely elevated those episodes. She was funny, scary, unpredictable, everything you hope for when you bring in someone iconic. Over the years, she's continued appearing in smaller films and theatre work, often projects that deal with identity, recovery, or art, themes that have clearly stayed close to her heart. These days, Sheedy seems content living quietly in New York, teaching, performing occasionally, and choosing only the work that speaks to her. In her personal life, Ali Sheedy's story has been as quietly fascinating as her film career. In 1992, she married actor David Lansbury, the nephew of the legendary Angela Lansbury, and a few years later they welcomed their only child, Beckett Lansbury. After more than 20 years together, Ali and David quietly separated in the 2010s. These days, she seems content living mostly on her own in New York City, a deliberate, peaceful life focused on teaching, creativity, and meaningful work rather than fame. She still acts occasionally, but only when the right project comes along. In 2022, she appeared in the critically acclaimed freeform series Single Drunk Female, playing the mother of the show's lead, a role that echoed her own maturity and understated strength. More recently, she took part in the 2024 documentary Brat, revisiting her time in that famous circle of 80s actors and reflecting candidly on what the label really meant. As for her legacy, Ali Sheedy remains one of the most emotionally grounded actresses of that 80s era. Her performances in films like The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, and High Art transcended the moment and still resonate. She continues to teach acting at the City College of New York, mentoring a new generation of performers. And beyond acting, she's helped shift the narrative about typecasting, about young stars finding their voice, and about what it means to reinvent yourself. In her own words, "I've lived the dream everyone thinks they want, now I just want to create things that mean something." Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments who you'd like to see next. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.